Out of all sciences, philosophy is the most undefined of them all. However, even though that there is no consensus definition about philosophy, its branches have their own definition, and examining them can really help explain what philosophy really is. So, I am going to define out of 5 branches the 2 branches, which is metaphysics and epistemology. Philosophers of the ancient cosmological period investigated the question of being. The cosmological period is a period of forming ancient philosophy, and in it, the focus was on uncovering the underlying nature of reality. So, materialism sees being as made out of material components. For example, Thales thought that being is water, and Heraclitus thought that being is fire, and so on. On the other hand, idealism sees being and the world as made out of something idealistic or spiritual. The famous philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras saw the number as the first underlying principle, while Plato thought that ideas were the first being because they are eternal. Material things, says Plato, can be destroyed and perish, and ideas cannot. And also, the famous philosopher René Descartes thought that 2 substances exist in the world. The first one is the mind, and the second is the body. One has one substance things, and the other has an extension. Lastly, pluralist philosophers see the world containing many beings. Plato was a pluralist-oriented thinker as he saw ideas being as a basic underlying principle, and furthermore, there exists an infinite number of ideas. Another pluralist thinker is the ancient philosopher Democritus, who believed that beings are atoms, and there are infinitely many atoms, which means that there exists an infinite number of beings. So, we are done with metaphysics. Let's go to the next branch of philosophy. When being faced with a question of what exists in the world, it is inevitable to ask, how do these thinkers know about being? How did they get their knowledge of what exists in the world and what doesn't? How do we know that what they are saying is true? This is the point where we go from metaphysics to the next branch of philosophy, which is the epistemology, or as known as nosology. The term nosology is derived from the Greek words gnosis, meaning knowledge, and logos, meaning a study, a science. Nosology is the field of study that investigates the source, means, the criteria, possibilities, and limits of human knowledge. There are various approaches to what knowledge and how it is acquired. Rationalism is a branch of epistemology that sees human reason as ratio and as the source of all knowledge and as the ultimate instrument we use when acquiring knowledge. Aristotle and Plato are rationalists, seeing human mind as able to understand everything and the universe. However, empiricism, on the other hand, claimed that all knowledge is acquired through experience and sees experience as the source of all our knowledge. John Locke and David Hume were empirically oriented thinkers, stating that people are born as a tabula rasa, which means that a blank state with no impressions on it, and that all knowledge that we acquire through our lives is indeed gained through our own experience. There is also another approach to epistemology, the irrationalism. Irrationalism sees the ultimate source of our knowledge as something irrational. And there are two different subcategories. The other one is voluntarism, which means that taking the will as being the real source of our knowledge, and the other one is intuitionism, which means that taking intuition as the proper means of acquiring knowledge. Epistemology also explores the limit of human cognition and knowledge. And there are also three basic approaches. One is dogmatism, number two is the agnosticism, and the last one is the skepticism. So, what is dogmatism? Dogmatism sees human knowing abilities as perfect and argues that man can know the world to the fullest. On the other hand, agnosticism claims that humans cannot know the world to the fullest, as we are all severely limited in our cognitive abilities. On the other hand, skepticism serves as a medium option between the two. It just doubts the possibility of getting to know the world. It does not say something negative or positive. It may be possible to know the universe, but it is also maybe impossible to know as well.
Logic is a study of correct reasoning, and it's closely linked to epistemology. It originated from the Greek word logos, meaning word, reason, thought, or science. Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher, founded logic and developed its foundation and its principles. Although he didn't view logic as a separate science, he recognized its importance as a mental skill for reasoning. Logic includes both formal and informal branches. Formal logic examines how conclusion follows from premises in a topic-neutral way using formal rules and principles to determine validity and truthfulness. Informal logic focuses on informal fallacies, critical thinking, and argumentation theory. Logic plays a central role in philosophy, mathematics, computer, science, and linguistics, enhancing critical thinking and reasoning skills. So let's move to another philosophy. Ethics is a branch of philosophy that examines what is morally good or bad. It teaches individuals how to live in harmony with moral principles and guided their actions and behaviors. Philosophers like Aristotle and Epicurus have contributed to the study of ethics, emphasizing concepts such as the golden mean and the pursuit of a happy life. Ethics is valuable not only in philosophy but also in science, as it helps individuals become autonomous and make ethical decisions. Number 1. Metaethics. Explore the nature and meaning of moral statements. Number 2. Normative ethics. Provide frameworks for determining moral actions. Number 3. Applied ethics. Applied ethical principles to real-world situations. So next, aesthetics. An important branch of philosophy focuses on the study of beauty, taste, and art. It examines aesthetic values and concepts such as the beautiful, the ugly, and the sublime. Aesthetics seeks to establish the meaning and validity of critical judgments regarding works of art, and it also explores the relationship between the mind and the sense of beauty. Aesthetics has a long history, dating back to ancient times. Throughout the years, different approaches have been proposed. Some philosophers argue for the objective and universality of beauty, suggesting that certain standard must be met for a piece of art to be considered beautiful. On the other hand, other philosophers see beauty as subjective and relative, believing that it resides in the perception of the beholder. This subjectivity explains why individuals have their own unique concept of beauty, leading to diverse interpretation where something deemed beautiful by one person may be seen as ugly by another. So that's the end of my report.
Good day everyone, I am Lyza Marie Alvarado. So my topic for today is about values. So what is values? So values is about individuals' beliefs about right and wrong. It shapes the human behavior. Values can vary widely among individuals and cultures. They often play a significant role in shaping attitudes, perceptions, and interaction within society. So there are four classification of values. So first is the personal values. These values are deeply ingrained and often stem from bringing cultural influences, experiences, and personal reflections. They can include principles such as honesty, integrity, kindness, and loyalty. The second one is political values. So, political values refers to beliefs and principles that individual or group considered important in the context of governance, politics, and society. For example, it includes democracy, liberty, equality, justice, and human rights. Third is economic values. Economic values pertain to beliefs and principles regarding the production, distribution, consumption of goods and services within an economy. The fourth one is religious values. So, religious values are principles, teaching, or moral codes derived from religious beliefs and traditions. They shape individuals' behavior, moral judgments, ethical decisions, and interaction within religious communities and society at large. So that's all for values.
Welcome, viewers, to our exploration of a fascinating concept in ethics, the human act. So, what do you think is a human act? A human act is an action performed exclusively by humans unique to our species. Not every action we do falls into this category. Acts of man are those shared with animals, like basic vegetative functions or emotions. When a human performs these, they termed act of man, not human acts. What sets human acts apart is the involvement of intellect and will. It's not just about what we do, but why we do it. Our thoughts and intentions matter in the ethical evaluation. Context is crucial. The circumstances surrounding an action influence its ethical implications. What might be acceptable in one situation may differ in another. Looking ahead matters too. We consider the consequences, both intended and unintended, to understand the ethical dimensions of our choices. In summary, a human act is like a moral puzzle. It's about our intentional choices, the situations we're in, and what might come from our decisions. Understanding the human act is delving into the complexities of our unique moral journey. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Niña Fatimati Ayuma, and my topic for today is about kinds of human acts. Human acts can be divided into two categories. First, we have elicited acts, and number two, we have commanded acts. Elicited acts emphasizes the internal component of human agency, meaning elicited acts focuses on thoughts, desires, and decisions made by an individual's will. Under the elicited acts, we have first desire or wish. It is a longing or a wish for something. It is an expression of what a person wishes and hopes for. For example, a student may aspire to obtain excellent grades at school. This desire may come from personal ambitions, personal objective, and wish for achievement. This desire will serve as their motivation that will affect their future actions or future decisions. To thrive in school. Next, number two on the list, we have the intention. This is a purposive tendency of the will towards a thing. For example, I personally want to participate in class. With this goal in mind, I will prepare in advance and do some research about a topic that I will be discussed on that day or will be discussed on that day. Because it is my intention to participate actively in school, my intention will push me to study so that I can participate in class. Number three on the list, we have consent. It is an approval granted by a person. Let's say, for example, you are conducting a research and you want me to be your participant. With that being said, before I give you my consent, you will first give me your informations about your research. And with that, I will only give you my consent based on the fact that you said. Next, we have the election. This is choosing or picking from a variety of possibilities. For example, if there are lots of clubs in your school and you are required to choose only one club, you will choose the club that you are interested in. Whatever you choose, it will be based from your preferences, values, and other factors. Next, we have the use. Utilization of something for a certain purpose. This one entails making a deliberate choice to use tools, abilities, or actions in a way that could help you the best. In today's generation, students use internet to research on the topics they have to know instead of going to the library and go and get some books. And this is to find information more easier and to find a more resourceful information, and that you can find that on the internet. Next, we have the realization or friction. This is the enjoyment of a thing willed and done. Of course, it is something that you personally that personally gives you satisfaction after preparing for lots of time. The second category that we have is called commended acts. It is a body-mind acts done to carry out all the elicited act of the subject. Under the commended acts, we have here first internal. It is a willpower and conscious choices that arise from within the will shape. It shapes our goals, intent, and personal agency. Next is external. It is a moral or moral laws on human behaviors involving obligations or duties expressed through mental or physiological functions controlled by the will. Last is the mixed. Or, in the other words, it involves physical and mental pioneers in completing the task. Next, aside from our two categories of human acts, we also have here the classifications of human acts. Number one is the morally good acts. It is about right or being noble. Then we have morally evil acts. That's repugnant or immoral acts. And then we have here last is the morally indifferent acts. These are behaviors that do not have a direct or ethical significance.
Good evening, everyone. I am Australian Michael, and I'll be tackling about the modifiers of the human acts. These modifiers of the human acts are factors that influence a man's inner disposition towards a certain actions. They affect the mental or emotional state of a person to the extent that the voluntariness of the person in an act is either decreased or increased. For example, Someone might be more likely to help a friend in need if they feel happy or compassionate about something, but they less likely but they less likely if they are angry or resentful. The modifiers of the human acts include ignorance, passion, fear, violence, and habit. Each of these can influence people's action negatively. For example, a driver speeds because they are unaware of the posted speed limit. That is the example of an ignorance. And the passion is someone lies out of anger to avoid getting in trouble. An example in fear is a witness is too afraid to testify against a criminal. Next, in violence, someone is forced to sign a document under duress. Habit: a chronic procrastinator continues to delay important tasks. Modifiers of the human acts are also obstacles. These are the obstacles that impacts the people's understanding of what freedom associated with their actions. For example, if someone is unaware of the consequences due to their ignorance, they may not be fully responsible for those consequences. That is what ignorance means. So, let's really start about ignorance. Ignorance is the lack or absence of knowledge of a person who is capable of knowing. The two types of ignorance are the invincible ignorance and the other one is the invincible ignorance. These are the general principles. Invincible ignorance is a type of ignorance which cannot be dispelled or knowledge that is lacking and cannot be acquired. The inability to dispel the ignorance or the acquired knowledge that is lacking may arise from various causes. For example, a child is raised on a deserted island. He does not know the rules or what right or wrong is. That is for the ignorance. The invincible ignorance, I mean. The invincible ignorance is a type of ignorance which can and should be dispelled. It implies culpable negligence to the person who could know and ought to know. Invincible ignorance can also be cleared up if one is diligent enough. There are three kinds of invincible ignorance. The first is the simple ignorance. Simple ignorance is the ignorance that exists when someone uses some but not enough diligence in an effort to remove the ignorance. It does not free us from responsibility. For example, a student does not check the syllabus and misses an important assignment due today. So that is his fault because he could check it. The careless or supine ignorance is the ignorance which results from the mere or the lack of effort. This ignorant type of ignorance is something that he doesn't try. That is the kind of ignorance that it is. The affected invincible ignorance is the ignorance that is deliberately fostered in order to avoid something or some obligation that knowledge might bring to light. For example, a student pretends not to know about a group project to avoid doing their part. Sneaky, right? So let's continue. Let's go to fear. Fear is a mental agitation or a disturbance of mind brought about by the apprehension of some present or imminent danger. There are also types of fear. First is the grave fear. It is that which is present when the evil threatening is considered as a serious. For example, witnessing a violent crime can induce a great fear. Next is the intrinsic grave fear. It is that agitation of the mind which arises because of a disposition with one's body or mind. For example, panic attacks can cause intrinsic grave fear. Next is extrinsic grave fear. It is the agitation of the mind which arises from something outside oneself. For example, being held at gunpoint induces intrinsic grave fear. Yeah. Slight fear is a type of fear naman in which the evil threatening is either present but slight or grave but remote. For example, feeling nervous before the presentation is considered as slight fear. We also feel that. We all feel that. So that is all for the fear. Next is we proceed to passion. Passion or concupiscence or the movement of the sensitive or our rational appetite which is produced by good or evil as apprehended by the mind. So concupiscence is not limited to sexual desires. It is the strong tendencies towards the possession of something, good or bad. Alright. So it is towards the avoidance of something. Movement of the passions are usually called feelings or emotions, especially if not vehement. Love, hatred, joy, grief, desire, aversion, hope, courage, fear, and anger fall under this heading. There are two types of passion. First is the antecedent concupiscence. It precedes an act of the will and is not willfully stimulated, such as sudden anger, for example, reacting impulsively out of surprise or frustration. You just blurted it out. Next is the consequent concupiscence. It is that which is deliberately and stimulated by the will. We have the will to do it. Such as, for example, John loses a game to Ben. He feels a slight disappointment. So instead of accepting the loss, John started replaying mistakes, imagining how he could have won and blaming Ben for distractions. So this fuels his disappointment into a bitter anger. Fueled by his anger, John lashes out to Ben with insults and accusations. So that's it. So let's proceed now to the number 4, which is the violence. Not violence. Violence is the forceful application of external pressure to someone to make them perform an action against their will. So, violence comes in two main forms. The perfect violence. It is when the victim offers a complete resistance but the force overpowers them, rendering them unable to act otherwise. For example, someone being held down physically to force a signed document, so they are very forced. Next is the imperfect violence. It is when the victim offers some resistance but eventually it gives in due to the pressure or threat of further harm. For example, someone is reluctantly handing over valuables under duress to avoid being attacked, like holdapping, like the scene of holdapping, that is. So, let's proceed now to our last, which is the habit. Habit is a learned behavioral pattern ingrained through repetition, making it easier and more likely to perform without more likely to perform a particular action without much conscious or thought. While habits can be positive, we're focusing on the negative ones here. Moral considerations regarding the bad habits. These includes evil habits. these recognized as such but continued freely don't lessen the responsibility. If someone knows a habit is wrong but chooses to indulge anyway, they are fully responsible for the consequences, like their habit of smoking. They continue to smoke despite knowing that it will risk their health, especially in the lungs. So, next is the evil habits. Being a actively corrected, this lessens the responsibility. When someone is genuinely tries to break a bad habit, their culpability for action influenced by that habit may be reduced. For example, an individual is struggling with procrastination, sets are reminders and uses time management techniques to overcome it. Like almost all of the students suffers from procrastination, so you might need that. So that is all for the modifiers of the human act. I hope you learned something. Thank you.